The first time I understood that my family could erase me with a smile, I was standing in my mother's dining room holding a pie I'd baked from scratch, listening to my sister laugh like I was a punchline she'd already perfected. I'm Aria Crawford. I'm 36, and if you had asked me a year ago whether I thought my own family respected me, I would have said, of course. We're just different. You know how we do that, how we soften the truth so it doesn't bruise quite as badly? But that night, I stopped softening it. It was early December, technically not a holiday, just one of those pre-Christmas dinners my mother insists on hosting, because she loves tradition. I had come straight from work, still half in my head, about a board vote that afternoon. I'd changed in my office into a deep green wrap dress, something festive but practical, and I'd spent an hour the night before making a bourbon pecan pie because my dad loves it. When I walked in, the house already smelled like rosemary and garlic, and the kind of warmth that should feel safe. My mother kissed my cheek. My father gave me his distracted half-hug. Celeste was by the window with Adrian, holding a glass of red wine like it had been placed there for effect. She saw me, smiled wide, and said, "Oh, good, Aria made it." I wasn't sure she'd be able to get away from, the museum. There was something about the pause before museum, something polished, something practiced. Adrian chuckled politely. "Busy season?" Before I could answer, Celeste tilted her head. "She does events and school tours and stuff. It's sweet." Sweet? I've negotiated 8-figure endowments. I've testified in front of city council about education funding. I oversee nearly 400 staff members and a strategic plan that impacts thousands of students across Pennsylvania. But sure, sweet. I smiled. I always smiled. "It's actually budget season," I said lightly. "Lots of planning for next year's STEM expansion." Celeste waved her hand, already bored. "See, I don't even understand half of what she says." And that was it. The door shut. Conversation moved on. I stood there holding a pie and feeling edited. That's the word that kept coming back to me later. Edited. Like I was the rough draft she'd cleaned up for company. I told myself I was being sensitive. I told myself it didn't matter. I told myself grown women don't need validation from their sisters. But that night, when I got home and kicked off my heels, I sat on the edge of my bed and replayed it. Not just that comment, but years of them. Oh, Aria's more academic. She's not really into the high-profile stuff. She prefers being behind the scenes. Behind the scenes. I run the entire institution. And the worst part, my mother never corrected her. Not once. A week later, Celeste called me out of the blue. Her voice was syrupy. "So, big news. Adrian's officially launching his state senate campaign in January. We're doing a private donor reception next Friday. It's important." "That's great," I said. And I meant it. I may have issues with my sister, but I'm not a monster. She hesitated, then continued, "We'll need you there." Need, not want. Need. "For what?" I asked, keeping my tone even. "For family optics, obviously. It looks better if everyone's supportive. Just don't get too into policy talk. This crowd is more political than educational." I actually laughed. I couldn't help it. "Celeste, I've been working with policymakers for over a decade." "Yes, but you're not political, she replied quickly. "Just smile. Be warm. You know. I hung up and stared at my reflection in the black screen of my phone. For a second, I considered not going. Let her curate her perfect image without me. But something inside me, maybe pride, maybe exhaustion, whispered, "Go." So I did. The night of the reception was freezing, the kind of sharp, brittle cold that makes the air feel fragile. The event was held at a restored historic hotel downtown. Marble floors, crystal chandeliers, that low hum of wealthy conversations blending into white noise. I wore a navy-tailored suit, not flashy, just solid. Structured. Me. When I walked in, Celeste was glowing. Literally glowing. Professional lighting does wonders. Adrian was at her side, shaking hands, nodding gravely at things people were saying. She spotted me and did that air kiss thing near my cheek. "You look nice," she said. Then softer, "Remember, light and friendly." I gave her a look. I'm not feral. She laughed too loudly. Adrian greeted me politely. Good to see you again, Aria. Likewise. Celeste slid her hand into his arm. Aria works at the Franklin Institute, she told a nearby couple. She's always loved museums. Always loved museums. Like I'm volunteering because it's cute. I felt it then, that old shrinking sensation. The one where you start to question if correcting someone makes you look arrogant, if stating facts makes you look defensive. So I said nothing, for a while. I drifted, listened, observed. Political donors are fascinating. There's a cadence to their speech, calculated warmth, strategic curiosity. About an hour in, I found myself beside a woman in her 50s, with sharp eyes and a slate-gray blazer. She was discussing education funding with someone from Adrian's campaign. Public-private partnerships only work if institutions have strong executive leadership, she was saying. That sentence caught me like a hook. I turned slightly. That's absolutely true, especially in STEM programming. She looked at me. And you are? I reached into my bag automatically and handed her my card. There was a pause, a visible shift. Her eyebrows lifted. Dr. Aria Crawford, President and CEO. The campaign aide beside her blinked. Of the Franklin Institute? Yes, I said simply. The woman laughed softly. Well, that's significantly more than works at a museum. Oh. I didn't turn immediately. I didn't need to. I could feel Celeste's attention snap toward us from across the room. Adrian approached, polite smile in place. Everything all right? The woman handed him my card. You didn't mention your future sister-in-law runs one of the most influential science institutions in the region. His eyes scanned it. I watched the exact moment comprehension landed. His posture changed, subtle but unmistakable. You're the Aria Crawford? He asked. I tilted my head. I believe so. Celeste materialized at his side. Aria's very modest, she said quickly. She doesn't like to make things a big deal. I looked at her. Calmly. I've never hidden my job, Celeste. The air went thin. Adrian looked between us. You oversee the entire institute? I do. And the statewide STEM Equity Initiative? Yes. Silence. Then the woman in gray said, We've been trying to schedule a meeting with your office for months. Adrian's campaign aide straightened. Wait, you're expanding into rural districts next year, correct? I nodded. If funding stabilizes. Adrian's tone shifted entirely. Would you mind sharing your perspective on how state policy could support that? He asked me. He didn't tell me, he asked. And I answered, not performatively, not dramatically, just honestly, about transportation barriers, about teacher training gaps, about long-term investment versus splashy ribbon cuttings. The circle around us grew. Celeste stood there, smiling too hard. At one point she interjected, Adrian has always been passionate about education. I didn't contradict her. I just continued answering the question that had been directed at me. After a few minutes, Adrian said quietly, Aria, could we speak privately? We stepped aside, near a tall window overlooking the frozen river. He exhaled. I owe you an apology. For what? For underestimating you. That wasn't your assumption to begin with, I said evenly. His jaw tightened slightly. Why didn't Celeste tell me? You'd have to ask her. Across the room, she was watching us, not smiling now. The rest of the evening unfolded differently. People sought me out, not because I'd demanded attention, because reality had adjusted the room. When I left, Celeste barely hugged me. The next morning, she called at 7:12 a.m. You humiliated me. I almost admired the audacity. I introduced myself, I said. You could have warned me you were going to flash your title around. Flash my title. It's my job, Celeste. Not a party trick. You made me look like a liar. I let that sit. You made yourself look like one, I replied quietly. She hung up. My mother called an hour later, crying. I didn't realize how big your role was, honey. Celeste always said, I know what she said. That conversation was harder than the gala, because it wasn't anger, it was realization. I should have asked you more, my mother admitted. Yes, I said. You should have. Adrian called that afternoon. Professional, respectful. He asked if I'd consider meeting to discuss policy alignment. I agreed, on the condition that it was strictly institutional. Over the next few weeks, things unraveled quickly for Celeste. Not because I sabotaged her, I didn't. I never spoke poorly about her. But when someone shows you they're willing to diminish their own family for image, it raises questions. Their engagement was mutually postponed, then quietly ended. She sent me a long email one night. No sarcasm, no gloss. I was jealous. She wrote, "Your work is real. Mine feels performative. I made you smaller so I could feel bigger." I stared at that line for a long time. I didn't reply. Some truths don't require conversation. They require distance. Thanksgiving this year was different. My invitation came a month early. My seat was set without condition. When I spoke, people listened. Not in awe, just normally. Celeste wasn't there. She'd moved to another city. As I passed the mashed potatoes, my father said casually, "Arya, how's the expansion project going?" And I realized something. The power wasn't in exposing her. It was in refusing to shrink anymore. Sometimes people minimize you, not because they think you're small, but because they're afraid of what your full size reveals about them. If you've ever been edited to fit someone else's narrative, if you've ever been introduced as a footnote when you're actually the headline, I see you. Don't argue your worth in rooms committed to misunderstanding you. Just stand in it. Eventually, the truth adjusts the room. If this story resonated with you, subscribe to Her Untold Revenge for more stories about women reclaiming their power quietly, confidently, and without apology. And share this with someone who's been shrinking themselves to keep the peace. You don't have to stay small to be loved, and you definitely don't have to stay silent to be respected.